So you have your limited liability company, your LLC, but you might not have an operating agreement, or maybe one that's not written very well, right? Maybe you just have a few things on a statement there. The problem with that is, and we've seen this with some of our clients that have come to us, is when you go to sell that business, or you are trying to find investors, you're trying to get bank money, someone sues you, one of your partners dies, there are so many things that can happen, right? And so all of these things get addressed in that operating agreement. And I like to think of it as a standard of procedure kind of a thing. And it's not like a true SOP. I mean, I think back of my military days with the Navy and serving with the Marine Corps and creating all these standards of procedures. And what they were these documents that that someone could go to, and they could be used, right? So not so much for me to look at, but someone else could come in and look at this and know exactly what's going on. It outlines that position, function, everything that my clinic, whatever, needed to do. So same kind of thing with a business. And so what it does, or what the operating agreement really is it outlines what the business is. What it gives us the arm lengths. It sets that arm length transaction, and so it separates you from your business, right? And so it gives you that legal kind of protection, and then it lays out the groundwork of how do things function, right? So how do we operate, and what do we do if, right? So what if this happens? Then we do this. What if someone dies? This is what we do. If someone gets incapacitated, this is what we do. If someone becomes mentally unstable, this is what we do. And so, as much as some of these things sound ridiculous, right? You have to address all these things, because if something comes up, and these things will, right? The one thing that you don't put in the operating agreement will be the one thing that you face when you have your company down the line. And so we've had clients who've come in who've had someone bought into the business, right? And then they wanted out 4 months after they were into the business, and they wanted their money back, and they wanted profits from where they thought the increase of the value of that business was, and which is kind of comical, because there wasn't an increase of value in that business yet. It was coming, right? There was potential there, but it wasn't yet. And taking out that money would actually cripple the company. And so an operating agreement has things in it like, you can't, as the initial investors, the capital contributions that you make, that you can't pull that money out for whatever, the first 12 months or whatever, that kind of thing. And so this is the kind of stuff that it addresses. And so we're going to get into a little more of a deep dive of what components do we need, and why each one of those is important. So first off, clarity. An operating agreement provides clarity for how the business is structured, how it's run, right? Then it also provides dispute resolution. So down the road, if you and the other members of the organization aren't in agreement with something, then we go back to the standard procedure, or this operating agreement, and we look at it and it says, hey, this is what when we were friends, right? When we all went into business together, this is how we said we would deal with things. And now now that there's friction because something has happened, right? Um, we go back to how we're going to resolve this, based off of, what we said we would do when we were getting along, not when we're fighting about money. Because down the road, when money starts to get involved, there's always ends up being friction of some kind, right? And so this is why things like addressing the business valuation or how the business is going to be valued, perhaps on the sale of the business. So for an exit strategy, an exit plan or a piece of that would be part of your operating agreement. What do we do when we have an exit strategy, right? When we sell the business, how's the money, how is the business split amongst the members, right? So the dispute resolution, a big piece of it. Capital contributions. And so capital contributions do more than just show how much money somebody has put into the business, right? They do a few things. So they show, one, how much money you put in. Two, for investor purposes, so if you're going to a bank wants to see that, not that just, hey, we have this business. When you have their operating agreement, you're laying out a document that says, hey, this business is going to run this way. And they can see how that's going to run. And they can see that you have a vested interest in this company. And so you put something into this. And so that shows something to an investor, right? And so, or a lender. And so the potential to borrow money actually you might be better off there. It also limits some of your liability there too. And so showing what you've done, how much money you put into this, showing that this is a separate entity, you put money into this, it's separate, it's not you, does help limit your liability when we get into indemnifications. So, which is another point, a big one, indemnification. This is one of the beautiful pieces and why so many people form their LLC to begin with, is they think they have this protection, right? They say, I'm not going to be a sole proprietor because I don't want anyone to sue me and I lose everything I have, and so they become an LLC. But then they never write an operating agreement, and then they don't have any protection, and so something happens in their business, and they end up being personally liable. And even if they had $1 million of liability insurance, which most people carry, it's the most common insurance coverage that they get, and they get sued for whatever, $4 million. Well, they only have $1 million of liability coverage, right? And they don't have an umbrella or anything else on that. They have to come up with $3 million. So any good attorney, when they go to sue a business, is going to sue the owners as well, right? I would, because if they name those parties to begin with, they don't have to prove, right, their involvement. If they do it afterwards, they have to then bring in evidence, right, that shows how they're involved. But if they do it up front, that ownership or that onus is on now the members to prove that they're not part of that, or they're not liable for what happened. So how to have that is to have an operating agreement that says this is how the business is run. It is separate from us, right? We have our money is separate, everything is separate. We don't do business transactions. I don't buy my personal stuff on there. Everything is separate. Indemnification is one of the key components of an operating agreement. So what does it do? That indemnification piece is one of the reasons why we want the operating agreement. So many businesses, right? They start out, and the whole reason they want to form an LLC is to avoid having to having the liability to something. So they say, hey, I'm not going to be a sole proprietor because I don't want to have any liability on me, right? I don't want to be liable for something. And so I'm going to form an LLC. But then they never draft an operating agreement. So why is that important? So that indemnification component. So having an operating agreement, showing capital structure, that alone starts to provide some type of indemnification, right? Having an indemnification component or a clause in there, right, further sets apart this and says, hey, I'm not responsible personally for things I do in the capacity of my position with the company, which is outlined in my operating agreement. It says this is what I do when I'm here. And so that indemnification piece is super big. So if someone sues us, right, so they sue me as a company, and they get a judgment, right, and the attorney is trying to pierce the corporate veil, which they will all do, and they'll try to put it, to make this an alter ego, of myself, or of all the members of this LLC. They'll do this, and we'll all be liable, right? But when we have an operating agreement, this gives us something to say, whoa, hang on. Here's our operating agreement. This is not us. Like, I'm not personally responsible for this. I'm acting, in the capacity as a member or officer of this limited liability company. And also, here's this indemnification piece. This company, indemnifies me and says that I'm not personally responsible for anything that I do, unless it's negligent, right? If I'm negligent, if I'm stealing money or doing something illegally here, there's no protection. I mean, clearly. But as long as I'm acting in the capacity of my position, with the LLC, then I have protection. So big component of that, and probably one of the biggest things that we deal with clients coming in, right? And so they want the protection, or they don't have the protection. They think they have it. They have insurance, but they don't have enough coverage, and or a situation happens with their business, and then they go, whoa, do I have this? And they're not sure, and then they start looking, for this, or they ask, and we do a little digging. We say, hey, let me look at your operating agreement. And they go, I don't have one. And then we say, whoa, that's not good. And so then we start having the same conversation that we're having now, right? And so this is again, very important document. So what else does it do? So not only do it does our capital structure, right? It outlines what we do and how we operate, kind of the SOP. It provides that indemnification agreement. It also gives us the dispute resolution. What happens when something goes awry or something goes wrong? It gives us the exit strategy. What happens when we sell the company, or perhaps maybe when somebody gets divorced? How are we going to handle that, right? And so maybe we have a clause in there that says that the company has right of first refusal if so in a divorce, if someone's shares, so that person then has to split their shares with a spouse. Their spouse, those shares are now up for sale, quote, sale. And so because they're up for sale, the company has the right to purchase them first before they're given to the spouse. And so the company can then absorb those and not have the spouse be part of the business. And why would we not want the spouse to be part of the business? Because perhaps the other members don't get along with that particular person, or that particular person has a totally different idea of how they want the business to run, right? They want to do something completely different, and maybe that was a majority of ownership with the company, and so they come in and they totally want to rearrange, do stuff and everything was going fine, and the rest of the company's like, hey, no, 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 no. And so this is why we have things like key man or key person insurance, right? When something happens to this person, it's like if they die, and those shares come up for the company to then purchase them, right? Because we have the right of first refusal. We need to have the money or the capital to then buy them. And so either we do a capital call, and the members all have to put in, a certain amount of money that can cover the purchase of those, or there's an insurance policy on the person if they've died that will cover, either the shares that are bought or the replacement cost of that person if they were working in the company. So if they're not just a member of the organization, but they're also working on a management capacity and functioning, doing something in the company, that they were a key person on that as well, we might need additional insurance to then pay to bring somebody on and at least cover their salary for a year to get them up to speed, right? So just the other things that we need to think about there. Other things that the operating agreement covers is dissolution. So what happens if the company goes bankrupt? You don't want that bankruptcy to affect all of the members personally either, right? And so if the company can't pay all of its debts, you don't want all of that to go onto the personal side of all the members. So we have a dissolution piece of that operating agreement as well that outlines how we dissolve the limited liability company, right? And so what do we pay? What do we do? How do we dissolve it, right? And we have all the protections in there at every stage to keep the members as protected as we possibly can. Okay, so in some states we have to have an operating agreement, right? And some people have the most minimal piece of it, and they really don't have the coverage that they need. Other states don't have a requirement to have an operating agreement, but if you don't have one, you're technically not really a legal entity, right? Because when something happens, if you don't have it, you have nothing to show that this is the organization, right? And so the LLC it's like another person, right? It's not you, it's another you. It itself makes the decisions. It itself does its actions and things like that. It's like you jumping into a suit and doing all these things with the monkey suit. But then when you're out of it, right? This is you. Inside, you're doing things with the monkey suit, and then you step out. We're doing some our personal stuff. The things that are happening inside the company are things that are listed or drafted out in the operating agreement. So this is what outlines all of our day-to-day activities, right? Why is this organization in business to begin with, and what does it do, right? Every little bit, we spell all of this out, right? What exactly do we do? What are the functions of the people that are involved in the business at every stage? And this is what provides that protection. And if you don't have this, what happens if you get sued or something happens where the state gets involved? There's what's called default rules, and those default rules might not necessarily be what the members intend, how they intend things to go when things go bad, right? And so you don't want to be stuck with the default rules. You want to control those, and you say, no, when something happens, this is how we do it, not how the default rules go. Our operating agreement will override those, and we say this is how it's going to go down. And so that's why this operating agreement is so important. So how do you create your operating agreement? So you can start from scratch, right? Which is always a daunting task, right? Because we sit down, we look at a blank screen, and we go, I don't know where to start. We put out our mission statement, and maybe we start our vision, and then we start formatting the document. We get the formatting absolutely perfect. We have a cover page, and the formatting's perfect, but we haven't got any content written in there. And so, starting from scratch is always a tough thing to do. Grabbing a template, not a bad idea. Grabbing a template is okay, but keep in mind, this is not. It's a template, right? It might get a sample. Maybe you get a redacted version of one. The good thing about using these templates or sample versions of these is this gives you a kind of a running start. And so you see how things are written, you see how each clause is kind of drafted, and this is not replacing, things for legal. You would still have this blessed by an attorney, right? But going through it, this is going to help spark a lot of the what if questions that maybe you'll have a hard time coming up with just without a blank screen, right? But as you're going through the sample and you get to things, you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. That I didn't think about that we should probably have in there as well to address it now. And so using a template is good. Hiring a consultant is a great idea. Why? You'll spend you'll spend some money up front. Spending all that time going through and researching, trying to find all the stuff that you need to have, you'll have somebody that's going to go through and ask you all these questions, right? And they're going to prompt you for all of this and get you to get all that down on paper or on digital form and put it together for you. And then you have something that is most likely already a legal draft, of your operating agreement. Now, should you still take that to an attorney? Yes, you should. You should always get it blessed by an attorney to make sure that you have that protection in there, to make sure that indemnification components and things like that are going to provide you the protection and stuff that you're looking for with that operating agreement. So super important to get that drafted out and get it blessed by an attorney. So we've covered a lot on why you need an operating agreement. So there's a lot of protection there. What were the components that we needed? What does it provide? It provides a lot of clarity. It provides indemnification. It provides the business structure, right? It outlines the capital contributions. It helps with our dispute resolution, and it has our exit strategy, right? So it has all these components in that operating agreement. So super big, right? There's a lot of pieces in it, but it can be broken down in little chunks. And if you can hire people to help you do that, or like I said, you can get the templates and try to do it yourself. But do it. You have to have the operating agreement. Without it, you don't have the protection that you think that you have, right? And so go back, look through your documents, see if you have one. If you do, read it, scrutinize it, and see if it covers a lot of the things that we've talked about today, right? So, hey, thanks for watching this first episode. We appreciate it. Please like us, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Check back, watch our next episodes. We'll be covering a lot of stuff on professional development. Hey, thank you for watching this first episode of ZDS Business in Action. I'm Dan Konzen, and we'll see you in the next episode.